Huge show coming up today. Brand new polling show that Generation Z, well, they don't actually like babies, but they do kind of like socialism. We will explain. Plus, Democrats continue to double down on protecting criminals and illegal immigrants. Not a smart move. But first, whatever plans you have tomorrow night, you should cancel them because we need you here with all of us to celebrate a decade of The Daily Wire with the live premiere episode of our new show, Friendly Fire, at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're not gathering to tell stories of the past. This isn't a nostalgia hour. There will be a little nostalgia. Instead, we're giving you a first look at what's coming next. New series, new projects, huge announcements, surprises we have been holding back until this very moment. This is the start of our next decade. You don't want to miss a single moment. It is the live debut episode of Friendly Fire. All of us will be together to do what friends do. Argue, debate. Michael will probably smoke a few Mayflower cigars. I'm going to make fun of him like a lot. Watch live tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern at dailywire.com and on the Daily Wire Plus app. Well, folks, the kids are not okay. We now have an enormous amount of poll data suggesting that Generation Z has some very serious problems. And those are problems that they didn't create for themselves. These are problems created by, honestly, generations of bad parenting in the United States of America. There are brand new poll numbers out from NBC News. And what it shows is basically young people not into getting married or having babies, also kind of like socialism. This is not good. It is incredibly not good. So according to this NBC News poll, results among respondents aged 18 to 29. They were asked about 13 different options of top priorities. And this is overall, and we'll get to sort of the political divisions in a moment, which show the difference between Trump's America and Kamala Harris's America. But overall, people 18 to 29, for women, the number one priority in life was having a job or career you find fulfilling. Number two, having enough money to do the things you want to do. 3, achieving financial independence. 4, having emotional stability. And then if you go all the way down the list, number 10, having children. Number 11, being married. That's a problem. That is a massive problem. If young women between the ages of 18 and 29 believe that it is a 10th priority to have kids and an 11th priority to get married, and their number one priority is having a job or a career, that is a gigantic mistake when it comes to the purpose of life. How about for men? So for men, they agree. Number 1, having a job or career you find fulfilling. And number 2, they also agree with women, having enough money to do the things you want to do. You have to go all the way down to number 7 to get to being married. And number 8, having children. Again, massive, massive problem. Any society that does not make its number 1 focus, not number 2, not number 3, number 1, getting married and having kids, is a society that is doomed to failure. Because that is, in fact, the priority of any society. You cannot pass your values on to the next generation if there is no next generation. Also, you can't pass your values on to the next generation if you have no values. And the reality is that central purpose in life comes from the book of Genesis, leaving your father and mother, marrying a member of the opposite sex, and having kids. And that's not just because it's in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis has lasted ages immemorial, specifically because that happens to be true. Any society that believes that earning for, I suppose, individualistic pursuits, because literally the number 2 priority here is having enough money to do the things you want to do. Any society that is focused on hedonistic personal fulfillment is a society that is doomed to failure. People will stop having kids. People will stop getting married. People will not be happy. And then when they are not happy, because it turns out that the fruits of economics are not enough to make you happy, they turn on the economics themselves. Because you cannot fill that family-shaped hole in the heart with cash. It is not possible to do it. You can't. The thing that gives fulfillment in life to human beings is getting married and having kids. And I know that in our radically individualistic society, we're supposed to believe that all forms of familial formation, that all forms of sexual behavior are equally admirable and equally the target of aspiration for society. That is wrong and untrue. We should be teaching our kids that it is important to marry a member of the opposite sex and have kids with those people. Now, will there be people for whom this doesn't apply? Sure, because for every rule there are exceptions. But if that is not the societal aspiration, what you end up with is people who are inward focused, because the thing that chiefly takes you out of your own emotional narcissism is getting married and having children. I talk about this in the book, in Lions and Scavengers. I talk about this, but the word in Hebrew for love is ahava. The root of the word ahava is hav, to give. And it is that giving that is at the root of love. If you have no one to give yourself to, if you do not have, as it says in the Bible, ezer kenegdo, right? Meaning a helpmeet is the way it's usually translated, but that's not what it means. Okay, when it says that God is going to create for Adam a helpmate or helpmeet, ezer kenegdo is the term that is used in Hebrew. What that literally means is a helper against him. The point is that a woman completes a man and a man completes a woman. And yes, they do need each other. And that is not a bad thing. That is quite a beautiful thing. And when they come together, they have children. And that is the most beautiful thing. And any society that vitiates that purpose and treats that purpose as not only secondary or tertiary, but 10th on the list of priorities is a society that is not only doomed not to have kids, it is a society that is doomed for unhappiness. And then when that unhappiness materializes, people blame the economic system. Okay, these two things are connected. There's polling data, as we'll get to in a moment, showing that young people particularly are warming towards socialism. Why? The answer is, if you can't get what you want in the form of economics, then you tend to blame the economic system. And it used to be that so long as you were able to earn for your family, that was the purpose of earning, to earn for your family, to be able to buy a house for your family, not just for you, for your family, to provide a better life for your kids. If you separate off family and kids from that purpose, no amount of money that you earn will ever be enough to have enough money to do the things you want to do, because there are always new things that you want to do. That is something that Adam Smith, the great proponent of capitalism, talked about. There are always new things you want to do with your money. That is not where fulfillment is found. And now, there is a political valence to all of this, as pointed out by Steve Kornacki. So, according to the NBC News Decision Desk poll about Generation Z, and again, I don't blame young people for this, I blame their parents. Parents did not hand down the values that they were taught by their parents to their kids. We now have 3 generations in American life that have degraded the value of family and childbearing and rearing in favor of atomistic individualism that was supposed to provide a sort of libertine fulfillment. And you know what? It's just empty. It's just empty, and people are unhappy, particularly women, by the way, because while men, it is their responsibility to be fathers and have babies, the reality of the world is that it is women, traditionally speaking, and yes, naturally speaking, biologically speaking, who long to have children. This pretend, nonsense, made-up world in which women are taught that they ought not want to have children is unnatural. Like in the purest biological sense, it is unnatural. There's a reason why every study of rhesus monkeys shows that female rhesus monkeys, if you give them a truck, will literally take the truck and start cradling the truck. And male rhesus monkeys, if you give them a baby, the male rhesus monkeys will start hitting each other with it. Men and women, different. When you tell women they don't want the thing that they absolutely do want, what you end up with is unhappy women. And when men can't fulfill their highest purpose, because many women don't want to fulfill that purpose either, they get angry at women and they become counterproductive and bad citizens of society. So here's how this breaks down politically, and it is fascinating. As I mentioned, Steve Kornacki points this out. Among men who voted for President Trump, the number one priority, and it's still not high enough, but the number one priority is having children, 34%. Number 2 is financial independence. Number 3 is fulfilling job and career. And number 4 is being married. Last on the list, tied for last, able to retire early and having emotional stability. And that's not because people don't want emotional stability. It's because that's not typically the way that men think. As a man, I tell you, we don't walk around thinking, man, am I emotionally stable today? How am I feeling emotionally? That is just a non-masculine attitude toward the world as a general rule. Already coming up, we'll get more into the polling data showing that Generation Z has a major, major problem. Plus, we'll get into Democrats defending crime and illegal immigration and transgender dancers at the VN. There's a lot happening. Anyway, when was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to prevent veteran suicide? Well, when your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of high-speed data is just $35 a month with mobile hotspot. Now, the reality is I'm using Pure Talk every single day. I take my calls pretty dang seriously. I know you do too. And so you need a great tower network, like Pure Talk has. You need that clear coverage. You need a great price. and a company that actually shares your values. It's time to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. But if you need another reason, something you can really brag about, Pure Talk is the only wireless company that actually gives you a 1-year free membership to Daily Wire Plus when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, choose a qualifying plan at puretalk.com/Shapiro. Relish your free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus. Pure Talk, wireless, worth bragging about. Also, when we first started Daily Wire, felt like we had to figure everything out with minimal help. The editorial guidelines, studio setup, production schedule, branding. All that was really overwhelming. Lots of decisions necessary every single day. Finding the one tool that simplifies everything when starting a business becomes a game changer and a lifesaver for millions of businesses. That tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. We even use it for our own Daily Wire shop to make sure things are running smoothly and efficiently so you can get all the goods. You might be asking, what if I can't design a website or I'm worried people haven't heard of my brand? Not a problem. Shopify's got you covered from the start with beautiful, ready-to-go templates that match your brand's style and helps you find your customers through easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And if you need a hand with everyday tasks, their AI tools created specifically for commerce can help enhance product images, write descriptions, and more. Plus, their award-winning customer support is available 24/7 to share advice if you ever get stuck. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial. Start selling today at shopify.com/Shapiro. Go to shopify.com/Shapiro. That's shopify.com/Shapiro. Okay, now contrast men who voted for Trump with men who voted for Harris. 54% of men who voted for Kamala Harris say their number one priority is fulfilling job or career. 42% say that it's a priority for them to have money to do the things that they want. Being married, 11%. Having children, 9%. So men who voted for Kamala Harris don't care about getting married. They don't care about having kids. This is mirrored by women who voted for Kamala Harris. So women who voted for Kamala Harris, 51% said it was a priority to have a fulfilling job or career. 46% said it was a priority to have money to do the things they want to do. 39% said having emotional stability, which, again, emotional stability is a byproduct of purpose in the world. Emotional stability is not something you get by going to your therapist. The way that emotional stability is actually materialized in the world, realized in the world, is by doing duty-bound things every day that make the world better, make your family better, make your community better. That is where mental health lives. Mental health lives in getting off your ass and stopping with the navel gazing and going and doing something productive with your day, something that is meaningful in the world, performing a duty, helping your community, building social. Those are the things that make you emotionally stable. If you just have a goal of emotional stability, you're going to be tilting at windmills out there because no drug is going to provide you emotional stability in the deepest and truest sense. And neither is any amount of therapy. The best those can do is act as palliatives against your depression, but they cannot actually solve your underlying malaise. A purpose-filled life, a meaning-filled life is the best counteractive to that malaise. Okay, so again, women who voted for Kamala Harris, literally last on the list, last is being married and having kids. Only 6% of women who voted for Kamala Harris said that it was important to a successful life to be married or have kids. That is simply the result of generations of propaganda directed at liberal women. That's all. That's all. Because convincing women that their magical superpower, which is to be able to actually grow another human in them and then to nurse that human toward maturity, and saying to women that actually that's the last thing that you're about. That's the last. No, it actively is not. It truly, fundamentally is not. And when you alienate women from the thing that is their magical superpower, and you tell them that's the thing they shouldn't want, what they actually should want is to be more like the men working 2,200 billable hours at a law firm. What you're going to end up with is an enormous amount of unhappiness on both the part of women who have now been alienated from a central purpose in life, the central purpose of life, and men who actively would like to form families with women and then fulfill their central purpose in life. Okay, how about women who voted for Trump? So amazingly, even for women who voted for Trump, and again, I think that a lot of this is just the result of a feminist movement that has degraded childbearing and rearing, truly degraded it. Even women who voted for Trump put getting married and having kids lower on their priority list. Their number one, in terms of having a fulfilling life, is financial independence. Number two is fulfilling job and career. Number three is owning their own home. Only 26% say having children. Only 20% say being married. This is a failure. It is a gigantic societal failure, a massive societal failure. And it is not unconnected with our broken politics. Because if you find fulfillment in your family, in your home, in your community, you're significantly less likely to then start searching for shadowy reasons why you're unfulfilled, blaming, quote unquote, the systems for your personal lack of fulfillment. For the fact that, yeah, you got that job at the law firm and you're working 2,200 billable hours and you're making a really good, solid living and you're still unhappy. And so what you do is you start blaming the systems that have created more prosperity than any system in human history, free market capitalism. These two things are not disconnected in any way, shape, or form. So there's another poll that is out from Gallup. Do you have a positive or negative view of socialism? Positive, 39%, negative, 57%. Okay, fine. So the views of capitalism are down. Right now, capitalism only has a 54% approval rating as opposed to 42% negative rating. And that is really low. And frankly, that's because people simply do not understand that their wealth, their prosperity, and their freedom are reliant on a private property system in which you are freely able to alienate your labor. That's all. People don't understand free markets because they don't take the time to understand free markets. People have a general belief that prosperity is the natural state of the world, and that anything that strays from that natural state is the system. That there's some sort of Edenic paradise where you could pick fruit off the tree and everything grew wild and you were rich. And then capitalism intervened, this sort of Rousseauian view of the state of nature, which is total trash, not true at all, either factually or theoretically, just stupidity. Okay, but fair enough, Americans like capitalism more than socialism, but you get to the younger generation and things start to go pretty haywire. Ages 18 to 34, 49% of Americans, 18 to 34, are positive about socialism. 46% are negative about socialism. How about capitalism? Age 18 to 34, same poll, 43% positive about capitalism, 54% negative about capitalism. These two things are not unassociated. If you go looking for meaning in all the wrong places, you are likely to not find meaning. You are likely to find grievance and anger and rage at the system. The Marxist materialist view of the world, which is that happiness is simply a result of material prosperity or material distribution, and that you are generated by your economic system, is a lie. It is not true, and it can't be solved. The problems with the human heart cannot be solved by the government cutting you a check or by the government taking money from Elon Musk and handing it to you. It doesn't solve the problem. Now, what this really does do is it puts free market capitalism on extraordinarily shoddy footing. Why? Because in any system that has a vibrant social fabric where you have healthy families and healthy kids and healthy communities and healthy churches, the economy is going to go up, the economy is going to go down, but the root of your happiness lies in that relationship with your family and with your community, and yes, with your country. In a society where all those bonds are broken, you end up relying on material prosperity as the thing that is going to buy you happiness. And so if the economy goes down, you wish to wreck the entire system. Right? If there's some sort of economic depression, you end up with a massive political crisis in which all of the actual machinery that provides all of the prosperity upon which the entire social welfare state relies. Because social welfare states do not function in nationalized economy countries. They don't. Because they don't generate enough prosperity. Basically, social welfare systems are the weight that gets to live atop the foundation of actual free market capitalism and commerce and trade and innovation and risk-taking and all the rest, and the creative, destructive process that is free market capitalism. That's what generates all the wealth. Ain't no socialist program ever generated wealth. All socialist programs can do is try to redistribute the wealth, and typically that also means, over time, quashing innovation, destroying risk-taking, and making the general economy significantly worse. But if you are looking at your life situation, and you basically, your philosophy is now, if line go up and to the right, happy, if line go down and to the right, sad, then if the line goes down and to the right, and you find your meaning somewhere else, outside of church or family or having kids, the only thing you care about is your job. That's like your biggest thing. And then you lose your job. What do you do? What do you feel about the system? You start to blame capitalism in general, and you start hoping for a great savior, a great socialist savior from the sky who is going to descend Zohar Mamdani-like and fix all of your problems. And that's when free market capitalism really is in trouble. And if free market capitalism dies, so do millions of people. That is the history of communism. That is the history of socialism. This is why I've been saying, and I will continue to say, the single greatest risk to the Trump era is a sinking economy. It is why good economic policy is really, really, really important because we are now living in an extraordinarily high-risk era, a truly high-risk era. It used to be that economies could survive vicissitudes. Free market capitalism could survive vicissitudes because, again, people didn't find their chief level of meaning in the economy. The economy mattered an awful lot. It will always matter an awful lot. Of course, material prosperity and conditions matter. But the way that you found your personal meaning in life when you got up in the morning was your wife or your husband and your kids and your church and your community. And as that's gone away, as that's been exploded over the course of the last 60, 70 years in this country, what you end up with is line go down and to the right. I hate the system. Let's tear it all down. Bernie Sanders or one of his acolytes ought to run the country. And that's why that line better keep going up and to the right. So the Trump administration has now apparently released a report, or is going to release a report, laying out alleged shortcomings of the Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs data. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. The report takes a critical look at the BLS and lays out a historical overview of the agency's jobs data revision. This, of course, comes amid President Trump's move to fire the BLS Commissioner Erica McIntyre. He's now nominated longtime BLS critic E.J. Antoni to run the agency. So here is the rule. The last couple of labor reports have been extremely weak. Hiring seems to be slowing or even in decline in the United States because of all of the uncertainty surrounding things like tariffs, surrounding AI, surrounding interest rates, and all the rest. Well, if you are arguing with the ref, the rule goes in sports, you are losing. If you're arguing with the BLS, you're losing. Presidents who are presiding over growing, healthy, burgeoning economies are not arguing with BLS. They're just not wasting their time there. That doesn't mean that Trump is wrong about BLS or the stats. He may very well be right. But the idea that basically, if you jerry-rig a new system of numbers, that really is just a problem in the measurement technique, that's not what people feel. It's not what people feel. Meanwhile, according to the Wall Street Journal, falling lumber prices are sounding an alarm on Wall Street about potential problems on Main Street. Wood markets have been whipsawed of late by trade uncertainty and a deteriorating housing market. Futures have dropped 24% since hitting a 3-year high at the beginning of August and ended Monday at 526.50 per 1,000 feet of board. That price drop might have been greater, but two of America's biggest sawyers said last week that they would curtail output, slowing the decline. Well, the crashing wood prices are troubling because they're an indicator that there is a slowing housing market as well as slowing in the broader economic activity. This is a problem. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has been deployed to virtually all of the Sunday shows in order to promote the economy, suggesting that things are strong and growing. And he is, in fact, very competent. But the whipsawing around tariffs, the bizarre sort of statism implicit in taking stakes and ownership in particular companies, sponsorship of particular ownership in companies, none of that is likely to lead to short, mid, or even real long-term growth. It just isn't. And so the question becomes, if you screw around with the free market, and this is the history of the anti-free market movement in the United States, typically what happens is the free market works pretty well. And every so often there's a crash. And typically the free market does a pretty good job of getting us out of a crash. Go look up the non-existent depression of the 1920s. There's a vast stock market crash in 1920-21, and it healed within months because the government basically stayed out of it. Unlike 1929, when after the stock market crash, we got the most interventionist public policy from both the Hoover and FDR administrations in American history by far. Or the gigantic failed recovery of Barack Obama, the slowest economic recovery in American history because of his vast statism and government interventionism. But the history of America's feelings about capitalism is if there is a crash, and if the government is responsible for that crash, and then if the government gets very involved, capitalism gets blamed. That is a problem. The economy must continue to move forward on solid footing. Otherwise, the socialists are waiting. They are. And what they are waiting for is something really, really, really bad. The Bernie Sanders movement is waiting in the wings. I know that everybody on the right, that we are all very optimistic. I know Donald Trump won the last election. Republicans have been pretty effective in getting through vast policy priorities. And that's wonderful. But things reverse quite quickly in this country, particularly upon economic stagnation. And so I would just warn everybody, don't get high on your own supply. The reality is that things can change very quickly. And being foolish about policy out of a sort of misplaced optimism that the left will never recover ignores the history of all American electoral politics literally ever. Okay, and that doesn't mean that the left can't find a way to blow it. They certainly can. And right now, the momentum is certainly with the right. But with that said, the economy is pretty much everything right now, the Trump economy. Already coming up, Democrats continue to defend criminals and illegal immigrants, led by people like Zoran Mamdani. Again, they want to make this guy the hero of the story, and he absolutely is the villain. First, I used to think grocery shopping was simple, and then I learned that over 4 billion pounds of meat was imported into the U.S. last year and can still be labeled as product of the USA, which is weird. If labels can be misleading about something as basic as where your meat comes from, what else don't you know about the meat that you're buying? And this is why Good Ranchers is taking over the game with quality meat you can trust, all born and raised right here on American soil. So our staff is constantly eating the Good Ranchers. In fact, the kids of our staff really eating the Good Ranchers. I've mentioned producer Savvy's child. When I say child, I say it advisedly. That kid is as big as I am, and the kid's like 3 because of Good Ranchers. 100% American meat, locally sourced from American family farms and ranches, delivered straight to your door. Right now, you can get $40 off plus free meat for life when you subscribe with my code BEN. That is BEN for $40 off and free meat for life. GoodRanchers.com. Welcome to the table. Get yourself some good old American meat right now at Good Ranchers. Go check them out right now. It's GoodRanchers.com. Also, I always assumed restless sleep was inevitable, night after night, tossing, turning, waking up with that bad back. You know, you kind of think that's how sleep is supposed to be until you get a mattress made just for you, which is what I did with Helix Sleep, which has made my sleep quality a lot better. Gotta tell you, I really miss it when I am on the road as much as I have been lately. I fall asleep at home easily in minutes, even when there's a lot going on. What makes Helix different, they don't just sell you a random mattress. They actually match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, a back sleeper, or somewhere in between, they've got you covered. They make it so simple to get your best night's sleep every single night. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz, get matched with a custom mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. Trust me, when you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept on anything else. Again, I've got that firm but breathable mattress. Makes my life a lot better. It makes my back better. I sleep better. Right now, Helix is offering an incredible Labor Day extended sale. Visit helixsleep.com/Ben. Get 25% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Ben for 25% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. Again, just visit helixsleep.com/Ben for this exclusive offer. All right, meanwhile, speaking of the left blowing it, the left continues to take a bizarre perspective when it comes to crime. Absolutely non-understandable unless you understand that for the hard radical left, crime is merely symptomatic of America's supposed racism. And so anybody who commits a crime really is a victim of the system. And anybody who's a victim of the victim is an unfortunate byproduct of the system as well. So if you go a couple layers deep, it turns out that it's Thomas Jefferson's fault that a deranged homeless man who is black stabbed an innocent Ukrainian woman on a light train in Charlotte. That seems to be the leftist case. This is why you hear dumb comments like, we can't incarcerate our way out of this. No, absolutely we can incarcerate our way out of crime. Actually, there's a very long history of people incarcerating their way out of crime. See, when people commit crimes and you put them in jail, you know what they can't do? Commit crimes against people again on the streets because they're in jail. In any case, we now have new details about the murder suspect in this horrifying case in which a young Ukrainian refugee was murdered in cold blood, sitting there. According to the New York Post, the deranged homeless man charged with butchering a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee on a Charlotte train was free on cashless bail after a magistrate released him with just a written promise to show up for court, despite a nearly 2-decade history of violence and mental illness. And only public policy insanity can be to blame for this. I mean, insanity is actually a way of getting people off the hook. It actually is public policy evil. If you are giving cashless bail to people who are violent schizophrenics and letting them off onto the street, that is not an act of insanity. That is an act of ideological evil, truly. That is evil. Freeing violent criminals onto the streets out of a misplaced sympathy for them is cruelty to the innocent. The suspect in this case, DeCarlos Brown, was arrested at least 14 times in North Carolina for crimes ranging from assault and firearms possession to felony robbery and larceny dating back to 2007. His own mother told a local TV station her son was schizophrenic and should never have been allowed to roam the streets. But Brown was a free man right up until the moment the cops said he viciously stabbed Irina Zarutska in an unprovoked and cowardly sneak attack as she rode the train home from her job at the local pizzeria. Again, the system failed Zarutska at every turn. The killing has exposed major safety flaws on Charlotte's mass transit system. Apparently, Brown was a fare beater. He took both the bus and the Lynch Blue Line train without ever paying a cent. So again, even a basic sort of broken windows theory, a turnstile policy, would have stopped this from happening. It turns out local cops don't even police the Charlotte area transit system. Instead, everything was outsourced to professional security services since last December. Again, this is truly ridiculous. The mayor of Charlotte, a person named Vi Lyles, issued a tone-deaf statement demanding compassion for people with mental illness. And then put out a statement, quote, "As I reflect on the tragic murder of Irina Zarutska, my heart continues to go out to her family and our community as we try to make sense of this horrific and senseless loss. This is a tragic failure by the courts and magistrates. Our police officers arrest people only to have them quickly released, which undermines our ability to protect our community and ensure safety. We need a bipartisan solution to address repeat offenders who do not face consequences for their actions and those who cannot get their treatment for mental illness and are allowed to be on the streets." That is true. I'm glad that you got it on second try, Mayor. Again, Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes released him with a written promise to appear for his next court date. The guy couldn't even promise to take his drugs for his schizophrenia. Totally ridiculous. President Trump, yesterday, issued a statement giving his love to the family of the young woman who was stabbed to death.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. It's not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
President Trump then put out a statement on Truth Social as well, pointing out that it's Democratic crime policy that leads to horrific circumstances like this. Quote, "I've seen the horrific video of a beautiful young Ukrainian refugee who came to America to escape the vicious war in Ukraine and was innocently riding the metro in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she was brutally ambushed by a mentally deranged lunatic. The perpetrator was a well-known career criminal who had been previously arrested and released on cashless bail in January a total of 14 times. What the hell was he doing riding the train and walking the streets? Criminals like this need to be locked up. The blood of this innocent woman can literally be seen dripping from the killer's knife, and now her blood is on the hands of the Democrats who refuse to put bad people in jail, including former disgraced governor and wannabe Senator Roy Cooper. North Carolina and every state needs law and order, and only Republicans will deliver it. Additionally, where's the outrage from the mainstream media on this horrible tragedy? Vote for Michael Whatley for United States Senate. He won't let this happen again." Well, you might think that President Trump is speaking hyperbolically here. There's only one problem. He absolutely is not. Zohran Mamdani wants to be mayor of New York. And if the polls are any sort of guide, then he will be the next mayor of New York, mainly because young people, Generation Z people in New York, appear to have some sort of mental deficiency. Zohran Mamdani recently said that his goal is to reduce the jail population. Yes, great idea, because people in jail are famous for not being criminals. Oh, wait, they're in prison for a reason. Again, this is not a call for everybody who smokes a joint to go to jail, obviously. But the basic idea that there are too many people in prison, as opposed to too many people walking the streets who are criminals and doing crime, is silly. Here is Zohran Mamdani being just a terrible human being, because that's effectively what he is.
The jail population of Rikers has increased since Eric Adams has come into office by more than 1,000 additional incarcerated New Yorkers. And what is quite staggering to me is that we know that we can reduce that jail population to less than 4,000. I mean, Vital City had an article about a number of different proposals that could reduce it to 3,700. And some of this also just has to look at the average stay on Rikers in the 90s was 50 days. Now it's more than 100. There are more than 1,500 people on Rikers who have been held there for more than a year. So I do think many of the reforms that have to be made are also reforms around the court system.
Well, I mean, obviously the top priority for New Yorkers is making sure that more criminals get out of Rikers early. Not just that, Mamdani also says he would like to abolish the gang database. So basically, he's just going to allow every criminal in New York City to roam free. Congrats to you, New Yorkers. I mean, you break it, you bought it, gang. You are fulfilling the H.L. Mencken statement. The democracy is the theory that the people should get what they want good and hard. Get ready, because you're going to get it good and hard from Zohran Mamdani.
Let me ask you about a bunch of different policies just to kind of get your thinking out there. If city council legislation to abolish the NYPD gang database were to pass, would you support and sign that?
I have supported that proposal. It's one I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant the inclusion of New Yorkers on the basis of whether they go out late, photos they put on social media, so much of the facts of life of being a young New Yorker, and yet it then becomes a mark of suspicion. And it is a concern of mine that we do not live up to, of all people, Eric Adams's words in 2021, who said that New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice. Mm-hmm. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
So we need to take gang violence seriously, but we also need to destroy the gang database. He has no replacement for it, by the way. He doesn't care. Again, the goal of scavengers like Zohran Mamdani, and that dude is a scavenger. He has not produced a single thing of value his entire life, literally his entire life. He has lived high on the American hog since he arrived in this country with his extremely well-educated and wealthy parents, who, by the way, were subsidized by the government of Qatar. And here he is now telling Americans that they ought to be subjected to criminals on the streets of New York because, he has vague standards about who should and should not be in the gang database. And then you wonder why most Americans are perfectly fine with President Trump trying to use the National Guard to quash crime, just on a political level. Democrats wrong-footing themselves all over the place on this stuff. It really is amazing. Rahm Emanuel, who's trying to pose himself as sort of the rational Democratic alternative to Mamdaniism, he says that when President Trump says that he's going to send the National Guard to Chicago, it's performative violence. Well, it's not performative violence. Actual violence in the city of Chicago, former Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
This is a president who's doing performative violence on a city, violence on its residents, driving a wedge without the effort to actually stop this senseless gun violence. And he would have a welcome hand from every city, of every mayor, of every political stripe, of every size city, if he would partner rather than cut the funding for police, rather than cut the funding that helps us dealing with carjacking. So I just think that you see it what it is. It's performative. It's a distraction from the failed economic policies of Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, what a failure by Democrats. What they should be saying is, sure, we would love help from the National Guard. And also, here are the other things that we would love to help decrease crime from the federal level. Like all of those things and the above. And that's the thing they should be doing. But again, they are too wedded to the idea that everything Donald Trump does is wrong, and therefore they must do the opposite. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, he was asked by a reporter about crime, and he basically just tried to blow it off.
Why is it that Democrats don't want to hold that particular Capitol Hill police officer with any sort of accountability, yet, as far as the cities in which the states that you're from, you don't want to deal with the crime that's actually going on in your own states? And Mr. Raskin, you're
Is there
laughing.
A question there?
No, Mr. Raskin, you're laughing, but a woman was just killed in your state, and you don't want to address that either.
Yeah, I'm not going to address the ad hominem foolishness that was just articulated. But what I will say very clearly is that we have, as Democrats, been very clear that we're going to support local law enforcement, which includes law enforcement on January 6th, the NYPD, the Chicago Police Department, the Metropolitan Police Department, and do what is necessary to help them do their jobs.
Well, actually, that is not what you have said. That has not been your consistent position. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Nancy Pelosi kneeling in kente cloth to protest the evils of police and the consent decrees rammed down by the Biden administration in the aftermath of George Floyd mania, and by the Obama administration in the aftermath of Ferguson and Trayvon Martin, attempting to prevent police from actually doing their jobs. And again, these are the people that the Democrats choose to elevate. Jasmine Crockett, she decided to take off her fake accent and put on her normal voice to talk about Republicans and their anti-small government beliefs with regard to law enforcement.
It is so rich that the Republicans believe in small government, and this is the biggest government that I've ever seen, because they have decided that now they are going to somehow be the local police that is going to solve local crime as the federal level. That is not what we're supposed to do, especially on our level. What we do is we write federal laws. That is our job, and that is the lane that we're going to stay in. And the only reason we're talking about January 6th is because the Republicans are the ones bringing this, not us.
Okay, so listening to Jasmine Crockett lecture people about small government and federalism is definitely amusing. And it seems like Democrats really only do that when they are talking about, protecting criminals and illegal immigrants. And meanwhile, speaking of Democrats protecting criminals, Democrats continue to try to obstruct ICE. ICE is apparently going to launch an operation they're titling Midway Blitz, which I assume will be better defense than the Chicago Bears presented last night. Truly an awful, I'm a Bears fan, truly an awful game for the Chicago Bears, as per our usual arrangement. In any case, according to the Washington Post, the Department of Homeland Security said on Monday it has launched an immigration enforcement operation here as part of the Trump administration's effort to target sanctuary cities. Immigrant advocates say several people in heavily Hispanic communities have been detained. The agency did not provide details of the scale or duration of the undertaking in Chicago, which will be led by ICE. The announcement came after President Trump vowed for weeks his administration would send federal law enforcement officers to the city as part of an effort to crack down on crime. Now, again, ICE does have the plenary capacity to actually enforce immigration law, including inside states, because there's federal law that prevents you from being an immigrant lawbreaker. You're not supposed to come here without your visa. You're not supposed to overstay your visa. And yes, the federal government does have the power of enforcement there. Apparently, according to the Washington Post, local officials and immigrant advocates said federal immigration officers began making arrests in Chicago on Sunday and had taken at least 5 people into custody, including a well-known flower vendor and people waiting at a bus stop and on the sidewalk. The advocate said there had been an escalation in enforcement actions and reported several sightings of ICE vehicles. While this is happening, the Supreme Court did lift limits on immigration raids in LA. There had been a federal judge who had attempted to stop the president from enforcing immigration law. The Supreme Court said no. In a brief unsigned order, according to the Wall Street Journal, they granted an emergency request by the Trump administration to remove the limits while the litigation continues. Government lawyers argued that the lower court had improperly interfered with the agent's ability to conduct immigration enforcement in a high-priority metro area that harbors a large population of immigrants who are in the United States without permission. Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurrence to explain his view. He said it was common sense that federal officers can conduct immigration checks where violations are most likely. Quote, if the person is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, that individual will be free to go after a brief encounter. The liberals on the court, of course, wrote a dissent. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who is the second dumbest justice on the court after Ketanji Brown Jackson now, which is saying an awful lot because Sotomayor is an awful justice. She wrote, quote, we should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. Well, I mean, that's not what's happening. I mean, they're allowed to question you, and then they will release you. That is silly. Okay? But Democrats continue to attempt to avoid the reality of immigration enforcement and pretend that this is some sort of grand scheme. It is amazing. Democrats actually have some fertile ground to go after President Trump. And they could be going after him on the economy. They could be going after him on allegations about drawdowns in foreign policy. There are a lot of areas where the Trump administration, like any administration, is vulnerable. Instead, they've chosen crime is actually not a problem, and illegal immigrants should be allowed to live freely without being bothered by ICE. Good luck with all of that. Okay, meanwhile, back to that original topic that we took up. Young people who seem to be completely unmoored from actual values. Celebrity culture has something to do with this. It really does. So, again, I only dabble my toe in celebrity culture. I don't spend a lot of time there because it is an incredibly stupid place filled with morally venal and shallow human beings. However, I am an exception. The vast majority of young people are deeply engaged in pop culture. They spend an awful lot of time on social media, and they idolize and emulate people like, for example, Sabrina Carpenter. And so the politics of people like Sabrina Carpenter actually matter. While I think the VMAs is tired and old and basically wore out its welcome during the Britney Spears days 20 years ago, it's still going on. And it's still promoting the same sort of libertinism and social leftism that it was 20 years ago. So Sabrina Carpenter, who is basically playing a version of Madonna in the early 80s, these sort of weirdly virginal and yet over-sexualized pop star. Well, she did a performance of the VMAs that was complete with a full-on drag queen / transgender protest, like with signs and everything. And this is the sort of stuff that, again, inculcates in young people a belief that the sole purpose of life is both political protest and the sexual feelings inside of you and the vicissitudes thereof on a day-to-day level, which is why something like 1/4 of all of Generation Z now identifies as LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign, even though the revealed preference in terms of actual sexual behavior is significantly different from that. Anyway, here is Sabrina Carpenter doing her ridiculous routine and the whole thing. So there's some of that at the VMAs. You also had the VMAs do a gay Romeo and Juliet. So I guess it's just Romeo and Romeo starring a Corey Fogelmanis, I suppose is the name of this human. Again, I'm not with it, as the kids say. So here, if this is your type of thing, then you must be a member of Gen Z. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess this is what Gen Z is going. I can't imagine why they are coming out all screwed up. The good news is they have both therapy and gay people to help them, according to Ariana Grande, who seems to have fallen off the wagon. I mean, honestly, it's very sad. She's incredibly talented. And here she is explaining how happy she is because she has both extensive therapy and also gay people. Thank you to my therapist and gay people. I love you. This seems like a deeply happy and fulfilled human being, as most of our celebrities are. And that's why we should take all of our moral and political guidance from them. Speaking of which, apparently some 1,200 members of the Hollywood community have decided that they're not going to work with Jews anymore, effectively speaking. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying. There's a list of signatories, figures from across the film and TV world, including Oscar, BAFTA, Emmy, and Palme d'Or winners, have signed a pledge saying they will refuse to work with all Israeli institutions and companies that are, quote, implicated in genocide and apartheid against the Palestinian people. Amazing, because every single one of these people, if dropped into the Gaza Strip, would be dead within 24 hours. But not because of Israel, like because of Hamas, and because of the Palestinian people who are extraordinarily politically radicalized. The list of signatories, which includes filmmakers like Yorgos Lanthimos, I think one of the most overrated filmmakers of our time, Anna DuVernay, who's also up for that title, Adam McKay, who may also be up for that title, Boots Riley, Emma Seligman, Joshua Oppenheimer, and Mike Leigh, and actors including Emma Stone, Olivia Colman, Ayo Edebiri, Lily Gladstone, Mark Ruffalo, of course, Mark Ruffalo, Peter Sarsgaard, and a bunch of other people. They all signed this pledge statement. It states that examples of complicity include, quote, whitewashing or justifying genocide and apartheid and or partnering with the government committing them. This would include the Jerusalem Film Festival, the Haifa International Film Festival, Dak Aviv, and TLV Fest. Now, what's hilarious about all of this is, number one, these people are brutally ignorant of everything, including basic human morality. In a fight between Israel and Hamas, there is no question that one of those sides is significantly closer to, say, the freedom-loving values of the West than the other side. But it's not about that. It's about the oppressor-oppressed matrix, and all of these people believe themselves to be marginalized artists from a system that is cruel. Again, scavengers living high on the hog in American and Western societies while tearing away at the very fabric of the principles that undergird those societies by siding with the world's worst human beings in the form of Hamas. It is worth noting, by the way, that the Israeli film industry is not famously right-wing, just to point that out. So the mass declaration was inspired by Filmmakers United Against Apartheid, which was founded by Jonathan Demme, Martin Scorsese, and 100 other prominent filmmakers in 1987 to demand that the U.S. film industry refuse to distribute films in apartheid South Africa. Again, the goal of attempting to slur Israel as an apartheid state, despite the fact that there are Arab parties that sit in Knesset, despite the fact there are Arab judges on the Supreme Court, despite the fact that Arab citizens of Israel have equal rights with Israeli citizens of Israel. It's insane, but perfectly predictable from the same group of people who believe that Kamala Harris is an absolute political genius and that the height of human fulfillment is transgender identification. Well, the Democratic Party has also taken up the call. Zoran Mamdani has now said that he wants to divest the New York City pension investments from everything related to Israel. I think he should go further. I think that Zoran Mamdani should personally stop using any technology that's spurred from Israel or from Jews, period. I think that he should stop using any medical treatment that came from Israel or from Jews, period. He should really go all the way, like whole hog. He should only, in fact, take products and services that were produced by colonized people in the third world. And then we can see how that all goes for him and for the city of New York. Here he was yesterday explaining this to Al Sharpton, a man who once suggested in New York City that people who were Jewish should pin their yarmulke back and come to his house after an Orthodox Jew accidentally hit a black kid with his car, spurring, or at least contributing to the Crown Heights riots of 1991 that ended with the murder of an Orthodox Jew, Yankel Rosenbaum. Somehow that guy has a show on MSNBC. So here is old Zoran Mamdani with new Zoran Mamdani.
Has your personal views on the phrase of global infiltrator changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language?
Yes, they have. And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints. Because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home.
So now he says that he is moving away from, he won't personally, he won't personally say globalizing. I don't believe him for one single solitary second. Of course, he believes everything he believed a moment ago. And this is the game that Democrats are increasingly going to play, is they are going to humor every single radical anti-Israel idea while claiming that they're not actually anti-Israel. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, another liar from the state of New York, she's doing this as well. She says, don't worry, 9 out of 10 senators are actually pro-Israel. Well, that's weird because about half of the Democratic senators in the Senate voted for an arms embargo on Israel in the middle of a war. So I don't believe you, Kirsten Gillibrand. I think you are a liar.
I will use my expertise to give them this perspective so they at least know how they're being received. Because 9 times out of 10, they aren't trying to be anti-Semitic or even trying to be anti-Israel. They think they're just fighting for human rights, or they're fighting for peace, or they're fighting for some other aim. But the words they often choose to use are very hurtful and harmful and are undermining.
She's a little hard to hear, which actually makes her more palatable. But she's basically making the case it doesn't matter how anti-Israel Democrats appear to be. They actually are pro-Israel. Well, you can either believe her or your lying eyes. Those are your choices. Meanwhile, the scavengers continue to march over in the UK. The UK police have arrested over 800 people at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. By the way, they were not just at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. They were specifically showing support for a group called Palestine Action, which was designated a terrorist organization in July in Great Britain. More than 1,000 people showed up with the sign saying, I support Palestine Action. And many of them were arrested. The reason that they, of course, were actually listed this way is because, quote, they had orchestrated a nationwide campaign of direct criminal action against businesses and key national infrastructure and defense firms. The government cited an incident in the Thales military manufacturing factory in Glasgow in 2022, in which 5 protesters scaled the factory's roof and caused what officials said was more than £1 million of damage using pyrotechnics and smoke bombs. They also attacked Israeli defense firm Elbit Systems in Bristol and one of the company's subsidiaries in Kent. So Britain arrested a bunch of people, but don't worry, the left will attempt to free them and then tell us about how this is the height of Western freedom, is people who hate the West being able to do property damage. Meanwhile, the French government, which has come out in favor of a Palestinian state because the reward that you get for the worst terror attack on Jews since World War II is a state, according to the French morality. I'm sorry, contradiction in terms. The French version of morality. Then the reward for a gigantic terror assault is a state, obviously. Well, the French government is about to fall again. And I would suggest, honestly, at this point for France, a 2-state solution. They need a 2-state solution. I think that there ought to be a second state of France. There can be the state of France for people who actually like the country and are patriotic about it. And then there can be a state of France that is just for the people who wish to import third worlders and their ideology that hates the West, actually. That seems like a good solution. Why not? Territorial integrity for the pro-Hamas advocates in France. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Emmanuel Macron has lost his second government in less than a year, a measure of how France is caught in a spiral of political dysfunction that is draining its public finances. A no-confidence motion against the government of Prime Minister François Bayrou won the support of 364 lawmakers in the 577-seat National Assembly, forcing him to tender his resignation. The fall of Bayrou, a centrist ally of Macron, after less than 9 months in office, deepens the country's paralysis at a time when investors are questioning whether France can muster the political will to rein in its ballooning budget deficit. The answer there, of course, is no. Beyond which, France has basically fallen victim to what Michelle Houellebecq suggested was a version of submission. And so, good luck to France, which has essentially signed its own death warrant by importing legitimately millions of people who hate its values. And we'll see how it works out for them. Well, meanwhile, in other news, the media continue to make a big deal out of Jeffrey Epstein non-revelations, which is kind of amazing. So apparently, the Epstein birthday letter with Donald Trump's signature has been revealed. And whoa, boy, amazing. Remember, we were told that basically Donald Trump drew a sexy silhouette. I got to say, he's not good at drawing silhouettes. If this is a thing that President Trump drew, then it is not, in fact, a sexy silhouette. He says that it is fake and that is not, in fact, his signature. I will say that the Donald there does look like Donald Trump's signature. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump actually wrote this thing. It also, I will say that if Donald Trump drew this silhouette, I feel like that is not properly proportioned for Donald Trump and his tastes. Let's just say it's underwhelming in a variety of ways. According to the Wall Street Journal, lawyers for Epstein's estate have given Congress a copy of the birthday book put together for the financier's 50th birthday, which includes a letter with President Trump's signature he has said doesn't exist. On Monday, House Oversight Committee members confirmed they received a copy of that birthday book, and it had a crude joke about a woman and an outline of a naked woman. And the signature was a squiggly Donald below the waist mimicking pubic hair. I think honestly that's kind of a stretch looking at this. But okay. And really, and people are like, oh no, Donald Trump lied about you. You mean Donald Trump fibbed that he didn't write a note that he wrote that really doesn't say anything? I can't believe it. You mean he denied a thing? Wow. Shock me more, world. I don't know how I'm going to take this shock. My heart just can't take it. The attempt to continue to whip up hysteria about Donald Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein is just, at this point, it's an op. Seriously. Make a claim. Make a claim. Like a serious, well-substantiated claim. Not a sort of speculative what if or just asking questions. Like a serious, well evidenced claim about the president. If you want to say it out loud. Don't hide behind your pathetic question asking. Just make the accusation and then we'll see where we stand. Alrighty, folks, coming up, we'll jump into the vaunted Ben Shapiro Show mailbag. The show continues for our members right now. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us. A government shutdown is on. President Trump and Pete Hegseth addressed the top brass at the U.S. military, and we discussed Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. A lot coming up. First, when the left attacks, the answer is not silence. The answer is not to retreat. It isn't to do less. The answer is to show up everywhere and make our voices louder than ever, to push out more content, more truth, more breaking news, more investigative journalism, fighting harder than ever before. And that's what we're doing at the Daily Wire. This October, Daily Wire Plus members are getting more new films, more new series, more new documentaries, and more of everything you expect from us. Join now. Get it all with 40% off new Daily Wire Plus annual memberships. So yesterday, the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States spoke before hundreds of top military leaders. Now, this had been touted for a few days in advance, the idea that basically all the top brass in the U.S. military was going to gather in one place in Virginia at the Marine Corps base in Quantico. And there's a lot of speculation as to what this meeting was going to be about. Was it going to be a sort of announcement of forward-facing in Ukraine or with regard to China? Was it going to be about Venezuela? Well, actually, as it turns out, it was going to be a speech from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, and the President of the United States about sort of recalibrating our military approach, particularly internally. So Pete Hegseth has spoken about this a lot over the past few years. If you go back and you watch an episode of the Sunday special that I did with Pete Hegseth about a year ago, he had a new book out in which he was talking about wokeness in the military, lowered standards in the military, the fact that more militaries around the world were not fearing us as much because we had implemented all of these left-wing ideologies within the military. This has been a big bugaboo of Pete's for legitimately years. Well, now he has the opportunity to change all that because, of course, he sits atop the Department of Defense. The event, according to the Washington Post, was organized by Hegseth's team at the Pentagon. And again, it did summon generals and admirals from command posts throughout the world to Virginia. Washington General Dan Kane, Trump's hand-selected chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told attendees in his opening comments the event was an unprecedented opportunity and honor for assembled senior officers and their top enlisted advisors to hear directly from the military's civilian leadership. So we begin with Secretary Hegseth's remarks. Hegseth was going again after wokeness in the military, and he railed against what he called fat dudes and men in dresses. So, again, this is... Optically, I understand the left being very, very upset about it, but it happens to be something that the American people agree with, and so do the people who enlist in our military. I understand that editors around the nation are very, very upset about what Pete Hegseth did yesterday. They're very angry because they believe that the military should be a place for social engineering as opposed to a place for war fighters. Well, Secretary Hegseth was a grunt. He's a person who served in the trenches. He was on the front lines. And what that means is that he is significantly more in touch with the feelings of people who actually serve in the military than certainly the people in the journalistic world, and truthfully, than many of the sort of political generals who have spent the last 40 years rising in the ranks. And that means that him recalibrating along those lines is actually not a bad thing at all. Here was Secretary Hegseth yesterday.
Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test.
So, this apparently was very upsetting to folks, and we'll get to the left-wing reaction in a minute. He also went after, as we say, what he called dudes in dresses, which was a specific reference to the fact that under the Biden administration, there were legitimately videos of troops doing drag as an attempt to drive people to the military. I can't think of anything that would drive the types of young men who want to join the military away from the military more than men in drag. Honestly, like that does not seem like a recruiting center for the U.S. military. And you can see it in the numbers. The Biden administration was having a very, very difficult time fulfilling its recruiting quotas. Pete Hegseth, from literally the minute he was announced as Secretary of Defense, started to get those numbers up. So Hegseth apparently said, quote, no more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses, no more climate change worship, no more division, distraction, gender delusion. Okay, that's, I mean, it's on point. Here he was saying just that.
This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that.
And again, people are apparently angry at this. And there's a fair bit of gaslighting going on here. So the way that this works is that the left takes institutions and they skew those institutions. And then when somebody who is not of the left takes over the institution and says, we're going to unskew it, the left says, how dare you politicize? How dare you do this? And they do this with so many institutions in American life. So take higher education. They will take higher education, which used to be a domain designed to actually create better American citizens, people who are in touch with their civilization. It took an institution that was supposed to be at least titularly nonpartisan and turned it highly partisan and of the left. And then people get in power who are not of the left, and they say, let's shift it back. Let's shift it back towards center. And the left says, how dare you touch our hallowed institutions? How dare you attempt to change the underlying politics of that institution? The same thing in the military. There was an attempt by the left to hijack the military and use it for a wide variety of social engineering causes, ranging from climate change to DEI to gender identity. And now, when the right takes over and says, hey, we're not going to do any of that stuff, we're actually going to go back to status quo ante, where the military was about winning wars, how dare you? How dare you politicize? How dare you intervene? How dare you get involved in the politics? Hey, understand that it's an exercise in gaslighting. The left is perfectly willing to gut these institutions and wear their faces around like a mask from Silence of the Lambs. But the minute that the right says, let's restore those institutions to what they were before, the left then claims politicization. It's nonsense. Hegseth specifically went after General Mark Milley. You remember Milley was the person who suggested that he had to examine his own white privilege, among many other wonderful lines from the former general. Here was Hegseth saying, we need more like Patton and fewer like Mark Milley.
The new compass heading is clear. Out with the Shirellis, the McKenzies, and the Millies, and in with the Stockdales, the Schwarzkopfs, and the Pattons. More leadership changes will be made, of that I'm certain. Not because we want to, but because we must. Once again, this is life and death. The sooner we have the right people, the sooner we can advance the right policies. Personnel is policy.
Okay, so, again, he's not wrong about any of this. Now, it happens to be true when he says that he doesn't want fat generals or fat admirals walking around. We've had some overweight generals before who were pretty good generals. I mean, Norman Schwarzkopf, who was name-checked there by Hegseth, was pretty famously a little bit on the tipping the scales side of the weight spectrum. With that said, the general idea here is, again, not wrong. And Hegseth says, listen, we're not going to use softened standards. Okay, there's been an attempt to inject diversity into the military by lowering standards. It's one thing if diversity is a byproduct of quality. It's another thing if we lower quality standards in order to ensure diversity. He says, We are going to ensure the highest male standards in the military. If you meet it, great. If you don't, tough.
Today, at my direction, each service will ensure that every requirement for every combat MOS, for every designated combat arms position, returns to the highest male standard only. Because this job is life or death. Standards must be met. And not just met, at every level, we should seek to exceed the standard, to push the envelope, to compete. It's common sense. And core to who we are and what we do, it should be in our DNA.
Now, again, all of this does seem pretty commonsensical, and as Hegseth says, high standards shouldn't be controversial. They shouldn't be toxic. High standards should be the standard.
Upholding and demanding high standards is not toxic. Enforcing high standards, not toxic leadership. Leading warfighters toward the goals of high, gender-neutral, and uncompromising standards in order to forge a cohesive, formidable, and lethal Department of War is not toxic. It is our duty, consistent with our constitutional oath.
Now, again, not wrong about that. And Hegseth makes the point that none of this should be political. Really, I mean, what's more political? Saying that we ought to appoint generals by race and gender, or that we should not appoint generals by race and gender? Obviously, the second is significantly less political than the first. The media, of course, treat that as the reverse. Here's Hegseth saying, listen, we need strong apolitical leadership in the military.
If I've learned one core lesson in my 8 months in this job, it's that personnel is policy. Personnel is policy. The best way to take care of troops is to give them good leaders committed to the warfighting culture of the department. Not perfect leaders, good leaders. Competent, qualified, professional, agile, aggressive, innovative, risk-taking, apolitical, faithful to their oath and to the Constitution.
Now, again, the reality is that the recruitment numbers have been up under Hegseth. They're rising under the latter days of Joe Biden, and then they really skyrocketed under Hegseth, specifically because of all of this stuff. Already coming up, the left is very upset about Pete Hegseth's comments. Very, very upset. Plus, we'll get to the government shutdown and all the latest breaking news on it. First, have you heard of the audience effect? It's that psychological theory that every person's behavior changes when they know they're being watched. Everybody becomes more rigid, more performative. Even if there isn't anyone telling us what to do, just feeling those watching eyes alters the things you say and do. It takes away just a little bit of freedom without you even noticing. Here's the thing. We're all being watched pretty much all the time we use the internet because your ISP, your internet service provider, is recording everything you do online. They're watching what websites you go to, how much time you spend there. They can see everything you're doing, even if you're using a private browser. Don't want to fall victim to this digital version of the audience effect? Well, you don't have to. You can just do what I do and get ExpressVPN. With ExpressVPN, 100% of my online activity is rerouted through secure encrypted servers. This makes it impossible for my ISP to see what I'm doing online. ExpressVPN also hides my IP address. That's the number that identifies you on the internet. Data brokers use it to build a profile on you, then sell it to marketers and other companies. ExpressVPN is easy to use. It takes one click, and it works on all your devices, phones, tablets, smart TVs, desktops, and you can have it on up to 14 devices all at once, so you can give the gift of privacy and freedom to your whole family. Again, every time I'm on the road, I'm using ExpressVPN. Hell, when I'm at home, I'm using ExpressVPN because my ISP shouldn't have my data. Right now, you can get an extra 4 months when you use my special link. Go to expressvpn.com/Ben. Get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. Also, this episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can make you some money. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Producer Jake has been raking it in this football season. This coming Sunday, Jake made picks in that Giants versus Saints game and the Broncos versus Eagles game. He loves how simple the interface is, and no, I'm not going to tell you how he actually picked, because that would be giving it away. PrizePicks is the daily fantasy app that makes football even more exciting by letting you create lineups in less than a minute. Just choose more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in the game. This season brings something brand new, Stacks. That's the only feature that lets you select the same player up to 3 times in one lineup. So if you're very confident in a quarterback's passing, rushing, touchdowns, you can put all of those projections together with options like Flex Play for added wiggle room or Power Play for bigger potential payouts, plus features like injury reboots that protect your lineup if a player leaves early. PrizePicks puts you in control. Available in over 40 states with fast and secure deposits through Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app for a reason. Download that PrizePicks app today. Use code BEN to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code BEN to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Now, for some reason, again, members of the sort of journalistic contingent, and I use that term loosely because we're talking about the ladies of The View, are very upset about this. And I definitely want to hear military advice from the ladies of The View. I cannot think of a better chiefs of staff meeting than the ladies of The View. Here they were, confused as to why Pete Hegseth would want physical fitness in the military. After all, why don't we want the morbidly obese across our military?
It also didn't make a lot of sense to me that he was saying that he was going to toughen physical standards and review the anti-hazing policy by sort of implementing a hazing policy. And then also he said he was going to return to the highest male standard for combat positions because the troops were fat.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that was supposed to be an uplifting message for our military.
Maybe he's referring to Colonel Sanders.
It was really a bizarre thing.
I'm confused as to why that's bizarre. Why is any of that bizarre? I mean, is the idea supposed to be, again, that we don't try to meet standards? Is the idea that the military is supposed to just be a place that makes the ladies of The View feel comfortable? The military is designed to go break things and do bad things in the night that need to be done to keep all of us safe so the ladies of The View can sit there and caterwaul about the latest Mel Gibson movie. Right? That is what the U.S. military is designed to do. And that requires civilian leadership that is deserving. A civilian leadership that actually understands why the military is there. Molly Jong-Fast, again, it is hilarious to me that the left keeps trotting out some of the worst people that they can possibly trot out optically to criticize policies like this. Molly Jong-Fast, she of the multicolored hair, also slammed Hegseth and President Trump.
I think we're going to see pushback to this. I think a lot about the Vietnam War, which was sort of a moment in an end of discrimination. There was the Army really focused on making an anti-discrimination, and they ended up really helping the Army in a lot of different ways because people were it was just a much more egalitarian force, and it ended up being really great for the military. I mean, woke doesn't come from recent, it comes from experience in the military. So I do think this is kind of bizarre. And if you think about Winston Churchill, the idea that people have to be thin in order to run the military seems kind of wild.
Winston Churchill was the civilian leader of the British military during World War II. Bernard Montgomery was not famous for being a giant tubbo. It's just, these people should make our military policy. I'm going to listen to Molly Jong-Fast about military policy when her best example is restructuring of the military during the Vietnam War, which was a disaster for the United States, by the way. Like, great job there, Molly. Really strong stuff. President Trump also spoke at this sort of convention of generals. And there he said that we were going to start using the military to crack down on what he called enemies within. Here was President Trump telling the troops he has their back. This is a big thing, by the way. It really is. You would hear this from Democratic politicians who say, we'll have your back. But then they would put in place rules of engagement that literally made it impossible for members of the military to do their job. There's been a major issue as long as I have been alive and longer. The rules of engagement put in place by political generals and politicians who don't actually seem to make a first priority out of protecting American troops. Our troops need to be engaged in war in ways that allow them to both achieve their mission and protect themselves, and putting them in no-win positions where they believe that if they do their job, they're suddenly going to be court-martialed based on political considerations. That is a disaster area. And it leads, by the way, to worse military outcomes. Not only that, in the end, it actually leads to more civilian casualties, because what you end up doing in order to avoid domestic casualties, like American military casualties, is fly 30,000-foot sorties, like the Clinton administration was famous for doing. If you use air power, you don't have to worry about your soldiers getting killed. You just end up killing more civilians. And that's the outcome of very, very tight rules of engagement, is the temptation to use air power as opposed to using power on the ground. Now, war is a messy business, and you do need leadership that will back up the men and women of the armed forces. Here's the President of the United States yesterday.
In this effort, we're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a little bit. It's the way it is. And that includes our great police officers and firemen and all of these people that are doing so well. Together over the next few years, we're going to make our military stronger, tougher, faster, fiercer, and more powerful than it has ever been before.
The president went on to say that the goal here is to protect the republic. That is the point of military power. It's not just about flexing. It's about protecting American interests.
We're bringing back a focus on fitness, ability, character, and strength. And that's because the purposes of American military is not to protect anyone's feelings. It's to protect our republic. And it's the republic that we dearly love. It's to protect our country. We will not be politically correct when it comes to defending American freedom, and we will be a fighting and winning machine. We want to fight, we want to win, and we want to fight as little as possible. You have to count on people like me to keep you out of wars because we don't want to go into wars.
Yeah, President Trump then said the goal here is to reawaken the warrior spirit and move away from a spirit of political correctness.
Together we're reawakening the warrior spirit, and this is a spirit that won and built this nation, and from the cavalry that tamed the Great Plains to the ferocious, unyielding power of Patton Bradley and the great General Douglas MacArthur. These are all great men.
Okay, the president also discussed what he called the enemy within. And there he was talking about criminality. He essentially said, listen, if we have to use the military to quell criminality and enforce federal law, then that is precisely what we will do. He actually said this is a pretty good training ground for America's military forces. Now, of course, this scares the hell out of people who are on the left predominantly because they believe that this means a fascist takeover of the United States. That is not what he is talking about. And the president uses colorful language. He exaggerates. He uses superlatives. It's a thing that he does. But if you truly believe the president is about to launch like an armed takeover of all auspices of the United States, that is silly. The goal here in terms of building up the military is to be so strong that nobody challenges us. This is the thing. People who characterize President Trump as an isolationist completely miss his entire foreign policy. He is not an isolationist. He is a foreign policy realist who is hesitant to use American force, except when it is in America's interest. And he wants limited use of America's force, even when it is in America's interest. And the goal is to actually use the power of intimidation to get things done, which means credible threat of use of force. That is the nature of foreign policy. Here is the president saying we have to be strong enough that nobody actually challenges us in the first place.
But as leaders, our commitment to every patriot who put on the uniform is to ensure that American military remains the most lethal and dominant on the planet, not merely for a few years, but for the decades and generations to come, for centuries. We must be so strong that no nation will dare challenge us, so powerful that no enemy will dare threaten us, and so capable that no adversary can even think about beating us.
Now, again, all of that is true. And listen, no Trump speech would be complete without him making fun of Joe Biden's inability to walk downstairs. The man's, he came in a one-of-one package. There are no more like President Trump. Here we go.
America is respected again as a country. We were not respected with Biden. They looked at him falling downstairs every day. Every day the guy's falling downstairs. He said, it's not our president. We can't have it. I'm very careful, you know, when I walk downstairs like I'm on stairs, like these stairs, I walk very slowly. Nobody has to set a record. Just try not to fall, because it doesn't work out well.
Okay, well, as we say, this is all geared toward a military strategy that is supposed to intimidate our enemies. That does mean, in terms of actual foreign policy, that we have to be on a forward footing vis-a-vis our enemies. And this brings up the question of the so-called national defense strategy. So, the Washington Post has a piece about the Department of Defense and a recalibration of our national defense strategy that is drawing critiques from some of our best officers, including General Dan Cain, Raising Cain, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. According to the Washington Post, the debate over the national defense strategy, the Pentagon's primary guide for how it prioritizes resources and positions U.S. forces around the world, is the latest challenge for top military officials navigating the Trump administration's unorthodox approach to the armed forces. Apparently, there's a lot of concern about the national defense strategy. It's still in development. Apparently, Trump political appointees within the Pentagon's policy office drafted the strategy, which is now in its final edits. The assumption here is that it's people like Elbridge Colby, one of the undersecretaries of defense, who is making this play. He, of course, is very much on the isolationist side. His original sort of pitch was that he wanted to swivel America's force concentration from Europe and the Middle East over toward China to try and stand China down with regard to Taiwan and the South China Sea. That seems not to be particularly true. Elbridge Colby seems significantly more likely to stand America's forces down pretty much everywhere because it doesn't seem as though he has a plan for the South China Sea or Taiwan, so far as I'm aware at this point. I would be happy to be reinformed of this. Apparently, Raising Cane shared his concerns with top Pentagon leadership in recent weeks. And again, Colby was apparently included in the discussion. Apparently, Kane tried to get the NDS to remain focused on preparing the military to deter and, if necessary, defeat China in a conflict. But the national defense strategy thus far seems to be less about forward deployment or about building up the military for the potential of standing down America's enemies, and it seems significantly more about domestic concerns. According to the Post, the document's tone is far more partisan than past strategies, and the defense strategy itself is apparently not focused on global competition with China. So, yeah, again, we will have to keep an eye on that because the purpose, of course, of a lethal military is to stand down America's enemies. I'm not sure what else the purpose would be. Alrighty, coming up, the government shutdown has now kicked into effect. Plus, Hillary Clinton says, we've had enough of these white Christian males. I mean, that lady just keeps singing the same song and it's not working. First, the Fed has finally dropped those interest rates. That's great news for America's homeowners. Expenses have become a massive burden on families. Wages are flat, prices keep climbing. For many, the only way to make ends meet is to lean on credit cards. But that cycle of high interest debt makes it really difficult to stay ahead. If you're a homeowner, I want you to call my friends at American Financing. Right now, interest rates have dropped. Many homeowners are seeing options in the low 5s. Compare that to credit cards charging rates in the 20s or higher. There's an easy path to see how you can finally put your hard-earned equity to work for you. American Financing can help you pay off that expensive debt, free up your cash flow, and keep your budget under control. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving customers an average of $800 a month, and if you get started today, you might even be able to delay your next mortgage payment. Take control. Call American Financing today, 866-574-2500, or visit americanfinancing.net/Shapiro. NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. APR for rates in the 5s start at 6.327% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-574-2500 for details about credit costs and terms. Visit www.americanfinancing.net/Shapiro. Also, you know, most children's vitamins out there, they're loaded with teaspoons of sugar, artificial ingredients kids don't actually need. Well, this is where Haya comes in. They've created an amazing chewable vitamin that kids actually love. The best part, 0 sugar, still totally delicious. Even the pickiest eaters approve. They've packed in 12 organic fruits and veggies plus 15 essential vitamins and minerals. It's non-GMO, vegan, allergen-free, and thoroughly tested for safety. That means you and I can both feel confident giving our kids vitamins made to this high-quality standard. Are you tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens? Haya now has Kids Daily Greens plus Superfoods. It's a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for the kids, packed with more than 55 whole food ingredients to support brain power, development, and digestion. You just scoop, shake, sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious and nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy. They even send stickers with your first order so your kids can decorate the bottle and make it their own. We've worked out a special deal with Haya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you have to go to hayahealth.com/Shapiro. This deal is not available on their regular website. Go to HIYAHEALTH.com/Shapiro. Get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Joining us on the line right now is the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. Mr. Vice President, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Likewise. Thank you, Ben.
So let's start with the news of the day. Obviously, the government shutdown is on. Democrats have decided that they would rather that a bunch of workers get furloughed and or fired than something. It seems unclear exactly what they want at this point. Can you clarify what exactly they are asking for in order to avert a government shutdown?
Yeah, so it's a great question because their demands have changed a little bit. If you go back even a couple of months ago, the Democrats were basically saying we have to shut down the government because Donald Trump is a fascist, and to allow him to have an open government would be to be complicit in whatever bad things Donald Trump is doing. So that was obviously childish and ridiculous. They updated their demands a couple of weeks ago, and they actually sort of put forward this $1.5 trillion spending plan for 3 months of the government being open, and hundreds of billions of dollars of that was literally, we want to give tax taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits to illegal aliens. Now, that's, of course, preposterous. And so now, even though last night they still support the taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens, they've now added a third demand on top of that, which is that they want us to work on the premium support for Obamacare, which doesn't even run out until next year. So the basic argument, as far as I can do, you're asking me to sort of get into the heads of Democrats, which is always a dangerous thing to do. The best way I can present this argument from Senate Democrats, Ben, is that for a program that doesn't expire until next year, they want to shut the government down now. And if we don't give them everything they want, from taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens to everything else on the healthcare front, they're going to keep the government shut down. I don't think that's a tenable situation. I think you saw some moderate Democrats crack even last night. And just on that, Ben, this is actually a very important point, because if you go back to yesterday afternoon in the Oval Office, I was talking with the president and some of our legislative team. He said, "How many votes do you think we'll get?" I said, "Well, we'll get nearly every Republican to keep the government open, but we'll probably get one Democrat to keep the government open too." We actually got 3. And so you already see, I think, the Democrats cracking a little bit, because they realize it's such a preposterous position to say, we're going to shut down TSA, we're going to not pay our troops because you guys won't give us benefits for illegal aliens. It's crazy, and I don't think it's a tenable political situation for them to be in.
So, Mr. Vice President, one of the things the legacy media have been picking on you for specifically, but the administration in general, is the claim that you're making that they want taxpayer benefits for illegal immigrants. They suggest, of course, that it's against the law for federal taxpayer dollars to go to illegal immigrants, but the truth is something different. They are trying to revise the terms of the One Big Beautiful Bill, specifically the terms that have to do with restricting the amount of state aid that can be reimbursed by the federal government that goes to illegal immigrants. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's always a sleight of hand. The Democrats play tricks with words here, but there are 2 very specific ways, and you can look at the legislative text, 2 specific ways in which the Democrats are asking us to give taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits for illegal aliens. The first of which is, if you're an American citizen and you've been to a hospital in the last 4 or 5 years, you probably notice wait times are especially long, and there's a very good chance that there's a person who's ahead of you in line who is an illegal alien. The reason that is because under the Biden administration, we would pay all of the hospital benefits for illegal aliens if they went to an American hospital. Now, that's bad for American citizens who want to use those services. It's also bad for American taxpayers who don't want to pay for illegal aliens to use those services. So that we turned that program off in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. The Democrats want to turn it back on, and that would cost, again, hundreds of billions of dollars. There's a second way they want to pay for healthcare benefits for illegal aliens. And to get into the weeds a little bit, if you remember, the Biden administration did mass parole. So they took millions of illegal aliens. They would wave the magic wand of amnesty and say, no, these are no longer illegal aliens. They are now parolees because we're not going to deport them. And then they would give those parolees healthcare benefits funded by taxpayers. We turned that off as well, and Democrats want to turn it back on. So it's just a matter of fact. As much as they try to change the words that they use and hide from the reality of the policy, it's a matter of fact that there are 2 programs that total hundreds of billions of dollars, taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits for illegal aliens. The Trump administration turned it off. Democrats want to turn it back on. And it's not just that we have a policy disagreement here. As crazy as that one is, it's not just they want to turn those benefits for illegal aliens back on. It's that they're willing to say that our troops aren't going to get paid until Donald Trump relents and turns those benefits for illegal aliens back on. It's preposterous. It's bad policy. But we also are not going to negotiate with hostages here, which is why the government is shut down right now, because the Democrats have taken it hostage. And if they want to turn it back on, there is a clean, easy piece of legislation that nearly every Republican supports. They should just vote for it, turn the government back on, and then we can have the debate about healthcare policy that they seem to want to have.
So, Mr. Vice President, can you tell us a little bit about the sort of threat that's been issued by the administration that some of the people who are being furloughed may just not come back? Obviously, the administration has been very practical in its use of executive power in order to cut the size and scope of government. That's what DOJ originally was about. The president has, of course, gone into every area of the federal government looking for places to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. And the president himself has said that this may be an opportunity to do more of that, even though Democrats are the ones initiating the shutdown. Can you give us some details as to what that means?
Yeah, of course, Ben, we'd love to cut the size of government more. We'd actually love to cut the amount of money that the government's spending even more. But we're not going to shut down the government to get our policy priorities. That's basically all what we're asking the Democrats to do is, look, let's have that policy disagreement. Let's not shut the government down over it. But to answer your specific question, I mean, what's basically happened here is that the Democrats are saying we're going to shut the government down. And we're saying, well, look, if you're going to shut the government down, we have to ensure that as many essential services as possible still function. I mean, there are obviously a lot of things that you and I would say the government shouldn't be doing at all, but there are critical things like the TSA, like air traffic control, like our military getting paid. And if we have to furlough workers or we have to do a lot of other things in order to ensure those essential services, as many of them as possible, remain turned on for the American people, that's what we're going to do. And so the Democrats are saying, well, Donald Trump wants to fire hundreds of thousands of people. No, we want to make sure the government, as much as possible, still functions. And if we have to cut some fat in order to ensure that's possible, well, the Democrats shouldn't have shut down the government and put us in this position to begin with.
As we've discussed, Mr. Vice President, it's pretty obvious that the Democrats have shifted their rationale for a government shutdown for months here. They're looking for an excuse. It seems that they are enthralled to a far left base that seems to want conflict no matter what. And as you mentioned, there are 3 senators. All of them are in swing states who are Democrats who have decided they didn't want to go along with that. Are you seeing any more wiggle room from Democrat leadership even this far as trying to get off of this particular issue? Because it's not a political winner for them. The polls are showing 60% disapproval for this government shutdown.
Yeah, so I think there are about 24 Senate Democrats who don't want to shut down the government and privately admit that their negotiating position is ridiculous. Effectively, give us everything that you want or we're going to shut down the government. They recognize that's a ridiculous position. So the Democrats are starting to show some signs of folding a little bit. I don't know how long they hold out. I don't think it's going to be much more than a couple of weeks at most. But look, we're going to keep on working with everybody, right? We want to open up the government. We want to actually solve some of these issues. So we're going to keep on working with them. But I don't think that they have a ton of fight in them, Ben, because their negotiating position is so ridiculous. And there are different ways you can answer the question of why is the government shut down? I mean, as you and I talk, the government is shut down. Why is that? Well, one answer is because Senate Democrats are trying to take the American economy hostage. A much more practical political answer to the question is because Chuck Schumer doesn't want a primary challenge from AOC. So what's happening is that the far left faction of one body of Congress is actually holding the entire government hostage because Chuck Schumer is terrified that if he does the right thing, if he does what 80% of the American people want him to do, then AOC is going to have a successful primary challenge. That's no way to run a government. Chuck Schumer should deal with his own political problems in his own way, but he shouldn't take the American economy hostage to do it.
Now, Mr. Vice President, it definitely is a rarity to watch a government shutdown in which the party shutting down the government is shutting it down because they want to spend a lot more money. And typically, when we've seen government shutdowns over the course of the last decade, it's been Republicans who are pushing for less spending and saying that they want to sort of revise the bargain so that we are going not as far into debt. Democrats here are saying they want to basically overrule whatever spending cuts happened in the one big beautiful bill because they lost that particular legislative fight. And now they're trying to reverse that by shutting down the government to get more spending, which is definitely a unique take on the situation.
It's a very unique take on the situation, Ben, and it's a preposterous number if you look at what they're asking. I mean, this is what's called a continuing resolution. It just continues spending at the level that it currently exists today, which again, Ben, I would like it to be lower, but we're not going to take the American economy hostage over these disagreements. So we're trying to keep the government open basically for about 3 months. That's it. And in order to keep the government open for 3 months, the Democrats are saying, give us literally $1.5 trillion of new spending. That is the price. So they've taken their hostage, and their price is $1.5 trillion of new spending. Again, like we talked about, a lot of which goes to healthcare benefits for illegal aliens. So it's bad policy. It's actually bad fiscal management. Republicans want to cut the amount of money that the government is wasting. Democrats want to increase it, and they're willing to shut down the government for their very ridiculous demands. That's why it's such a losing position politically.
Well, Mr. Vice President, I know you've got a very busy day. Hopefully that will involve negotiations with more reasonable Democrats. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
Well, there's a constant suggestion that during a government shutdown, everybody gets fired. The entire government shuts down. Everyone dies, just like during net neutrality. So I asked our friends and sponsors over at Comet, a project of Perplexity, what percentage of the federal workforce continues to work during a government shutdown? And the answer is, during a government shutdown, about 60 to 75% of the entire federal workforce continues to work, either because they are considered essential or they're funded through sources not affected by annual appropriations. Recent estimates from the Trump administration indicate less than a quarter of federal employees would be furloughed, meaning about 77% would continue to work using newer contingency plans for the 2025 shutdown. Essential personnel like law enforcement, military, air traffic controllers, and those funded by mandatory spending like Social Security continue to work without pay until appropriations resume. And departments like Veteran Affairs and Treasury furlough less than 5% of their employees, keeping pretty much everybody working. So, I mean, it kind of feels like, a government shutdown is mostly the stuff you need and kind of gets rid of a lot of the stuff you don't. Now, apparently the Trump administration is continuing along the lines of saying, listen, if there is a shutdown, then I guess we'll fire people. Here's what President Trump had to say about that. He says a shutdown means not like what Democrats thought it meant when there was a shutdown where they were shutting down services in order to harm the American people and make it uncomfortable. Trump's basically like, you know what? You want to shut down the government and furlough the government? Some of those people ain't coming back.
You all know Russell Vought. He's become very popular recently because he can trim the budget to a level that you couldn't do any other way. So they're taking a risk by having a shutdown because of the shutdown, we can do things medically and other ways, including benefits. We can cut large numbers of people out. We don't want to do that, but we don't want fraud, waste, and abuse.
Okay, so the president then went on to describe his take on why the Democrats are shutting down the government. This is sort of the big question here, because by the polling data, this is a terrible move for Democrats, truly. There's a brand new poll out of YouGov, I believe, that suggested that 60% of Americans think it's a bad idea for Democrats to shut down the government. President Trump says the goal here for Democrats is to continue subsidies for illegal immigrants, among others.
We could come up and through this whole thing, because, I don't know, we'll probably have a shutdown because one of the things they want to do is they want to give incredible Medicare, the Cadillac Medicare, to illegal immigrants. And what that does is it keeps them coming into our country, and like they do in California. And no country can afford that. No country.
So what is the actual issue here? Democrats say it's about additional ACA subsidies. That'd be the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare subsidies. So what exactly are the subsidies? Well, back in 2021, the Biden administration decided to subsidize everybody who's making up to 400% of the federal poverty level. 400%. Just cut them a government check. Not 100% of the poverty, 400% of the poverty level, which definitionally means not poverty level. According to the Wall Street Journal, premium tax credits are a form of government subsidy that caps the maximum percentage of household income an individual pays toward their ACA health coverage. In 2021, the Biden administration expanded eligibility for the tax credits and increased subsidy amounts. The enhanced provisions eliminated the prior income cap for eligibility, which was 400% of the federal poverty level, and lowered the maximum percentage of income enrollees can be required to pay out of pocket. And again, maybe 1.2 million, something like that, people would presumably fall off the ACA rolls because of something like this. What about the claim that some of this money is going to go to fund unauthorized immigration? Well, there were tax law provisions that Democrats are trying to reverse, including provisions that limited federal funding for immigrant health care. Democrats are seeking more than $1 trillion altogether in health care funds, including for ACA subsidies and Medicaid, over the next 10 years. So basically, Democrats are trying to put back in place all of the subsidies that got cut in the tax bill that President Trump and Republicans passed just a couple of months ago. So how about the claim that it's illegal immigrants who are going to benefit from all of this? Well, Obamacare legally is not supposed to cover illegal immigrants. However, there was eligibility prior to that tax law for lawfully present immigrants, which includes refugees, asylum seekers, and some visa holders. That includes so-called dreamers who are here, in fact, illegally. People who came to the country as children or as minors and really never had a legal rationale for being here and have been given a temporary stay that has now lasted since the Obama administration. Apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal editorial board, the case needs to be made as to why this is all a bad idea, to restore all of this. As the editorial board says, Democrats are warning of higher premiums if the GOP does not extend turbocharged Obamacare subsidies that expire at the end of the year. Speaker Johnson is right. The subsidies are bad policy. The supercharged subsidies first passed in 2021 for a COVID-19 emergency. Democrats had a 2025 expiration date to make the Inflation Reduction Act look less expensive over that 10-year budget window. Expecting that Congress would then sign up again for more of these subsidies, Republicans did not vote to extend those subsidies. So what would the effect be? Someone at 100% of the poverty line would, on average, pay $3.45 a week in premiums for the cheapest middle-tier plan. Taxpayers would still foot 98% of the premium. The cost would run $52 a week for a person at 250% of the poverty line. Taxpayers would still pick up 2/3 of the premium. Extending those subsidies will cost $450 billion over a decade. So, might you see some Republicans cave? It's possible here. But again, this is not a great hill for Democrats to die on. Democrats continuing to claim that millions will die, which is their usual. Millions will fall off the healthcare rolls and then die because they're not willing to pay $3.45 a week, or because they're not willing to pay $52 a week if they're making 250% the poverty level. I just don't think that that's going to hunt. Which is why Democrats actually had a tough time shutting down a late-breaking attempt last night from Republicans to move forward a continuing resolution. Multiple Democrats dropped off the bandwagon, including John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Most of the purple state Democrats actually dropped off the bandwagon here. And so it seems likely that by the end of the week, the shutdown, if not over, will be in its death throes. That we'll already be at the end of the shutdown. Because again, Democrats really don't have a lot to stand on here, and much of this is simply about virtue signaling to their extremely left-wing base. Meanwhile, President Trump, he can't stop the trolling. So just a couple of days ago, the president put out an AI video of Chuck Schumer talking about the government shutdown. And of course, it's an AI video, so Schumer didn't actually say this, but it's Schumer talking about how he wants to make sure that illegal immigrants are subsidized in terms of health care.
Look, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. We have no voters left because of all of our woke trans bullshit. Not even black people want to vote for us anymore. Even Latinos hate us. So we need new voters. And if we give all these illegal aliens free health care, we might be able to get them on our side so they can vote for us. They can't even speak English, so they won't realize we're just a bunch of woke pieces of shit, at least for a while until they learn English and they realize they hate us too.
Well, Democrats then got very upset at President Trump because how dare he use this sort of racist imagery. In the video, of course, you can see Schumer arguing for illegal immigrants to get free health care, and mariachi music is playing in the background. And then Schumer, in AI, says that there's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. And it has Schumer standing next to Hakeem Jeffries, and Hakeem Jeffries in that AI video has a handlebar mustache and is wearing a sombrero. This prompted Hakeem Jeffries to say that bigotry will get you nowhere, cancel the cuts, lower the cost, save healthcare. We are not backing down. And then Schumer put up a post on X, quote, "If you think your shutdown is a joke, it just proves what we all know. You can't negotiate. You can only throw tantrums." Guys, you're throwing a tantrum over a dumb AI video of Hakeem Jeffries with a handlebar mustache and a sombrero. I got to tell you, it ain't working. Well, President Trump never won to stop the trolling, President Trump. He then put out a video that was actually a real video of Hakeem Jeffries talking about the shutdown with Lawrence O'Donnell and virtue signaling about how you can't make jokes about this, except this time the AI cuts in and Hakeem Jeffries gets his mustache and his sombrero back, as well as an entire mariachi band of President Trump playing the guitar.
It's a disgusting video, and we're going to continue to make clear bigotry will get you nowhere. We are fighting to protect the health care of the American people in the face of an unprecedented Republican assault.
We live in both the dumbest and the funniest timeline. I gotta say, this is all of our life now. This is the business we have chosen, my friends. Coming up, the left keeps just kind of running into a buzzsaw. It's kind of amazing. Hillary Clinton is out there saying that white Christian men need to be stopped. Zohran Mamdani is out there claiming to be a hero of the Republic. It's all trash. I don't like it. But you know what I hate? Running out of something I actually need and then having to scramble to reorder it, especially when it comes to my health, because consistency is that big difference maker. That's exactly why I signed up as a Balance of Nature preferred customer. Every 28 days, my supplements just show up at the door without me even lifting a finger. No missed days, no, oh crap, I forgot to reorder moments. It's automatic, so it's consistent. And when it's consistent, it sticks. Here's what really got my attention. As a preferred customer, you're always getting the best price Balance of Nature offers. This is as low as it gets every single order. Your wallet will notice the difference guaranteed. Get this. Shipping is completely free every month. No tracking numbers to stress about, no extra fees. Balance of Nature handles all of it for you. Here's my favorite part. You get paired with your own personal health coach, not some chatbot, an actual human who checks in with you, helps you stay on track, and looks at your whole picture. The Balance of Nature, when I'm on the road particularly, super useful. I just bring the bottle with me, pop it into the protein smoothies, and I'm good to go. Why pay more when you don't have to? It saves you money, time, and hassle. You don't have to plan ahead because your routine actually plans itself. Head on over to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code Shapiro. Also, imagine you're sitting at home, relaxing, and suddenly it hits you that you might not actually be as secure as you think you are, and you hear a noise outside. Well, with all the stories about break-ins and new security technology, it's natural to want that extra peace of mind. What if there was a smarter way to protect everything that matters most to you before the trouble even comes inside your house? That's where Simply Safe comes in. Simply Safe is different. Instead of a home security system that only reacts after a break-in, Simply Safe is designed to stop crime before it starts. Unlike traditional systems, their AI-powered cameras can spot potential threats while they're still outside. The moment a suspicious person appears, their agents confront the intruder to let them know they're being watched. They can even trigger a siren or spotlight if necessary. That means real action before anything happens. We got Simply Safe at the studio. That makes us feel a lot safer. And when we leave our equipment at night, we're not afraid it's going to be gone in the morning. Other systems might let you review footage after the fact. Simply Safe's professional monitoring agents, they're always on, intervening in real time, contacting emergency services if necessary. There are no long-term contracts, no hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Named Best Home Security System by U.S. News and World Report 5 years running, Simply Safe even offers a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free. Right now, my listeners can save 50% on a Simply Safe home security system at simplysafe.com/Shapiro. That's simplysafe.com/Shapiro. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, you may be wondering if amidst all this chaos, Democrats have a hope in hell of winning back Congress or the presidency. And the answer is that if they weren't insane, then maybe they might have a shot. The problem is they're crazy. So all the things that Americans hate, like, for example, DEI, which is an 80-20 issue. Americans want meritocracy. They do not want special privileges for people based on race. Or say gender identity ideology, radical gender notions that men can be women and women can be men. Another 80-20 issue. Or Democrats insist on taking the 20% side. Or open borders, which is almost a 100% issue in America. Nobody wants open borders except for an elite coterie of Democrats. They will not let go of that stuff. And they simply believe that if they keep saying the same stuff over and over, but somehow more passionately, that's going to win over Americans. Well, good luck to them. Hillary Clinton, it is amazing. Every so often it appears that maybe Democrats will begin to gain some momentum. And then Hillary Clinton emerges from the woodwork and proceeds to do a dive from the top rope onto Democratic hopes. So she was on MSNBC the other day, and she dropped the idea that white Christian males are the problem. Slow clap for Hillary Clinton. Really, I mean, genius level stuff from Hillary. Yes, what you need to do, Democrats, is you need to keep insulting white Christian males. That is going to go so well for you electorally.
The idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view, a certain ideology, it's just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for.
So what she's talking about there, people of a certain race and a certain, she's talking about white Christian men. Right? The idea that you can turn back the clock to a time when white Christian men ran the country. And now, again, there may be a coterie of people who believe that that is the thing that matters most. That is not the vast majority of Americans. And characterizing all of her opposition as people who effectively are people who only believe that white Christian males should run the country, it's truly insulting and silly. It is just a riff on her deplorables comment that Republicans writ large are people who are deplorable and awful and racist and evil. It's a throwback to Barack Obama's bitter clingers comment that the people who were voting against him were simply white people living in Appalachia who are xenophobic, who are racist, who are clinging to God and guns. If Democrats keep doing, I don't know why they keep playing this hit song over and over, because all it does is ensure they never get elected. But I guess their solution is they're going to keep doubling down forever and ever and ever, tripling, quadrupling down on the multiracial socialist coalition they think Barack Obama forged in 2012. And I've said it before, 2012 was the seminal moment in American politics in my lifetime. The election everybody's forgotten about is the one that changed America the most. Why? Because in 2012, Barack Obama, who campaigned as a unifier in 2008, decided he was no longer going to be a unifier. America had turned on him because of Obamacare, and that must be because America was racist. And so he decided to cobble together a majority-minority coalition with a bunch of white, college-educated liberal women. And that was going to be the coalition for Democrats going forward, ignoring white men, ignoring blue-collar people, focusing in on that coalition of the willing for Democrats. And Democrats keep doing this, except further to the left. This is why they keep promoting Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani in a national election does not do well. He does not. He might be able to sneak through in all Democrat New York with 47% of the vote or something. But the notion that that makes him a national candidate or the guiding light of a new generation for Democrats, pretty crazy stuff. That doesn't mean you couldn't get an AOC type as president. You certainly could if the economy tanks. But it will require external circumstances changing massively for that to happen. At heart, the American people are not up for this, but Democrats keep pushing it nonetheless. Zohran Mamdani, again, he's a great example of how Democrats have crappy plans, but lots of passion. Here is Zohran Mamdani yesterday doing his smiling through the evil routine.
We will fight for every single dollar that the city currently receives from the federal government. And I look for examples across this country that showcase the best way to respond to Donald Trump's strengths is not collaboration, is his threats rather. It's responding with strength. And what we see in California is an attorney general of the state has estimated that for every dollar they spent on lawsuits against the federal government's threats to withhold funding, they won more than $30,000 in what would otherwise have been lost. And so we will take that same approach.
Oh, wow. Wow, the resistance. He is such a resistor. Amazing, amazing stuff. Well, basically all he is more intelligent Brandon Johnson in Chicago. He will have a moment of popularity in New York, and then he will absolutely tank the way that Brandon Johnson did. Brandon Johnson continues to claim that federal troops in Chicago protecting ICE officers, for example, and lowering crime rates is a bad thing that is fomenting chaos. I swear, I do not understand how Democrats believe this is a winning combination here.
There's no way that anyone in this country should be okay with armed, militarized troops being sent to cities. These individuals, these brave women and men who sign up to serve and protect this country, they do not do it with being deployed against American citizens and residents in mind. This is not only appalling, but this is, quite frankly, an egregious attempt to undermine the sanctity of our democracy. What we are seeing from this president is an absolute rejection of our Constitution. There is no one in the city of Chicago or cities across America that are calling for the militarized occupation of our cities. This is not about safety. This is not about immigration. This is about fomenting chaos and terrorizing the people of Chicago and cities across America.
Okay, I'm not sure how many Chicagoans believe that more law enforcement means fomenting chaos and terrorizing neighborhoods. It seems to me that crime foments chaos and terrorizes neighborhoods, but Democrats got to keep doubling down. They got to keep doubling down. And the extreme language continues apace. Ilhan Omar continues to go after Charlie Kirk. She says that his legacy was bigotry and hatred. This, of course, is following commentary from Ta-Nehisi Coates saying the same thing. And Ilhan Omar literally wrote a letter to a judge some years ago trying to find mercy for people trying to join ISIS. But somehow the legacy of Charlie Kirk is bigotry and hatred from the most hateful person in Congress, Ilhan Omar.
I have nothing to apologize for. It is a tragedy that Charlie Kirk was killed in that way. I feel for his widow and his children. They will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But there is no legacy to honor. It was a legacy filled with bigotry, hatred, and white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And as a black woman and as a Muslim in this country, I refuse to join the chorus that changes the history of what is on the record from this man.
Wow. I mean, the queen of verbal grind is, she's going strong here. She also, by the way, blames President Trump for a shooting at a Dallas ICE facility, which was perpetrated by a person who hated ICE, literally wrote anti-ICE on the bullet casing.
You don't think Republicans are responsible for the fact that detainees were killed? The fact that they dehumanize immigrants all the time? You don't think that rhetoric is responsible?
Man, oh man. Okay, keep going with this, Democrats. Really, I'm enjoying it. Randy Weingarten, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, she too is on the radical bandwagon. They just keep trotting out their worst side. It's a political strategy. I'm not sure if it's a winning political strategy, but it certainly is a strategy. She says that she is now wearing a paperclip publicly. Why? Because apparently some teachers during the Nazi occupation of Europe wore paper clips or something. So now she's wearing a paper clip. Oh boy.
There is a reason why in Norway, when the Nazis took over Norway, that's why I'm wearing this paperclip. I wear two things now. The American flag, nobody can take patriotism away from me, and a paperclip. What did the teachers in Norway do when there was the Nazi occupation? They started wearing paperclips.
Really? This is okay. All right. Well, the stupidity on the left never ends, so I hope that they're enjoying defeat because they're going to get more of it through this particular angle. Well, speaking of stupidity, the media are trotting out a judgment from a federal judge named William Young from the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. It's a 161-page opinion ripping on President Trump for using the power of the executive branch to crack down on immigrants who have a green card to the United States who are engaging in anti-American pro-terrorist activities. And this is an insane opinion. It's truly insane. Like, this person is a screw loose, this federal judge. I'll explain in a moment. But the opinion is all about the detention and deportation of students who are attending college in the United States on student visas. And the fact that the State Department has basically said, listen, if you're coming here and you support terrorist groups, we don't want you here and you can leave. And that if you're coming here at the behest of the United States to enrich our country, and in fact you make our country poorer and dumber and more pro-terrorism, you're out. Well, the judge who wrote this, he's getting all sorts of plaudits from the legacy media. The judge has a screw loose. I provide to you as evidence of this the fact that he opens his judgment with a photocopy of a bizarre handwritten note that somebody sent him that said, Trump has pardons and tanks. What do you have? Postcard dated June 19th, 2025. And then he writes back, Dear Mr. or Miss Anonymous, alone, I have nothing but my sense of duty. Together, we the people of the United States, you and me, have our magnificent Constitution. Here's how that works out in a specific case. He does that before the actual entry of the case. And this person is now being touted as a resistance hero because this is the way this stupidity works. He literally quotes his own wife in the opinion. I'm not kidding. On page 150 of the opinion, he writes, quote, President Donald J. Trump, he seems to be winning. He ignores everything and keeps bullying ahead. Half admiring, half quizzical, a very wise woman. My wife made this comment about our 47th president in an entirely different context. And then it's footnoted, quote, I do not discuss pending cases with anyone outside chambers. I quote it here because it is so perfectly capturing the public persona of President Trump, especially as it pertains to the issues presented in this case. A brief explanation will suffice. 1, he seems to be winning. Triumphalism is the very essence of the Trump brand. Does this sound like a judicial opinion to you? Or does it sound like a rambling screed from a dude who is entering perhaps Alzheimer's territory? This was treated as resistance hero stuff. Truly, this is a judicial opinion from a federal judge. Quote, Triumphalism is the very essence of the Trump brand. Often this is naught but hollow bragging. My perfect administration, wearing a red baseball cap in the presidential Oval Office, emblazoned Trump was right about everything, or most recently depicting himself as an officer of the 1st Cavalry Division. Unfortunately, this tends to obscure the very real and sweeping changes President Trump has wrought in his first year in office. If change is a mark of success, President Trump is the most successful president in history. 2, he ignores everything. This is indubitably true. So it's just a giant op-ed for Slate, entered as a judicial opinion, and the media are treating this as legitimate. This was the headline on Drudge. I'm not even kidding you. The headline on Drudge was Reagan appointee rips into Trump. Wow. Such heroism. The headline was admin absolutely scorched by Reagan appointed judge over chilling free speech crackdown. But the opinion is from a nutty person, like a nut. Now, lifetime appointment to the courts, it has some upsides. It definitely has some downsides, but it is amusing to me how far the left is willing to go to attack President Trump, even upholding the opinions of people who clearly are losing it somewhat. And meanwhile, the White House has now unveiled what they are calling Trump RX, which is a drug buying site, and they are giving a special deal to Pfizer. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump unveiled plans on Tuesday to launch a government-run website dubbed Trump RX for consumers to buy drugs directly from manufacturers. He said Pfizer plans to offer some of its drugs on the site at a reduced rate. Separately, Trump told Pfizer that they would offer all their drugs to Medicaid at a reduced most favored nation price, as well as introduce any new drugs to the U.S. market at those reduced prices. In return, the company gains a 3-year grace period to exempt it from national security-related tariffs as long as the company invests in domestic manufacturing. Pfizer stock then dramatically shot higher. Apparently, they already had a lot of that deal with Medicaid, where they're already selling the drugs at a real discount price to Medicaid. So they're basically getting a removal from the tariff regimen. He was flanked, by the way, by top health officials as well as the Pfizer chief executive, Albert Bourla. For Pfizer, the agreement with the White House brings more certainty to issues that have been hanging over it and other drug makers, the threat of tariffs and the pressure to cut prices. Pfizer's concessions might only have a limited impact on its sales and profit, and they serve as a blueprint for similar White House deals with other drug makers. So apparently, Pfizer didn't change any of its financial guidance, so it doesn't seem like much changed here. They already apparently have these arrangements with the federal government, but it appears they're making promises to build in the United States, and that's going to free them of some of the tariffs. This is the beautiful thing about the tariff regime, for those who like it, is it allows you to claw at least titular concessions from certain people. Dr. Oz touted this change.
We're going to finally deliver on the fair drug prices that President Trump has been speaking about for 2 terms. We're going to celebrate this historic day, I predict, this historic day in the medical field for generations to come.
Okay, so we'll find out whether this actually effectuates change in the drug pricing. Obviously, the big problem in drug pricing is that if this really were to have an impact on drug pricing in the United States, driving down profit margins or making these drug makers put out the drugs below profit margin, that has an impact on R&D. You can't just squeeze the balloon without the air going somewhere. So I'm always quite skeptical of these sorts of government interventions. It seems to me that the best available use of tariffs would be to force other countries. You want to use tariffs as leverage against other countries? We should force other countries to pay the market value of the drugs they buy from American companies, as opposed to American taxpayers footing that bill. Okay, meanwhile, on the entertainment front, big controversy because a person who calls himself Bad Bunny is now going to be doing the halftime show. Now, I'm aware of this human who calls himself Bad Bunny. I assume that's not his given name. I don't think he came out of his mother and she said, I shall call him Bad Bunny. But apparently this is causing controversy because Bad Bunny does not like President Trump and also likes to cross-dress for the press. So pictures have emerged of him wearing a mini skirt and heels and all the rest. His actual real name is Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio. And he apparently had said he would not perform in the United States again because he disagrees with President Trump's immigration policies, but he is going to actually appear at the Super Bowl. So actually, I'm kind of in favor of this because showing that members of the entertainment community are just gigantic sellouts, that to me is just wonderful. I kind of enjoy that, actually. Of course, Bad Bunny hates Trump. So does Taylor Swift. Okay, let's stop pretending. All of these big pop singers are not Trump fans, but forcing them to eat crow is kind of funny. Like Bad Bunny's doing the halftime show, where he'll do some virtue signaling about how Trump is bad to Latinos or illegal immigrants or whatever he's going to do. He might do some of that stuff, but let's be clear. Dude's a total hypocrite. He wanted to take the check and the fame, and so he's coming back to the United States to perform. He had told the media, quote, honest, I can't risk the safety of my fans like that. Mainland America just doesn't feel necessary to me anymore. I've already performed there many times. Fans in the U.S. have had plenty of chances to see me perform live. Okay. I mean, whatever. People are saying the NFL doesn't know its audience by having Bad Bunny perform. Let's be real. The halftime show is not for the dudes. The football game is for the dudes. The halftime show is where we all go out to the bathroom and all the ladies then jet in to watch the halftime show. That's the real use of the halftime show. Again, I can't remember the last halftime show where men were like, gotta stay in for this. This is like vital watching. Have you ever been to a Super Bowl party? This is exactly what happened. So, everybody needs to calm down about the Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl thing. Yeah, he's a schmuck. Who cares? Meanwhile, again, the entertainment community being a bunch of giant sellouts, Jimmy Fallon, he now says that he's going to keep his head down to avoid politics. Why does he only say that now? He should have done that before. Like, they all should do that. It is unbelievably silly to me these late-night hosts feel the necessity to speak out politically when we have no interest in what they have to say politically. They tell jokes, usually bad jokes about politics. Here is Jimmy Fallon pretending he's been intimidated into silence.
We hit both sides equally, and we try to make everybody laugh. And that's really the way our show really works. I mean, our monologues are kind of, the same that we've been doing since Johnny Carson was doing The Tonight Show. So really, I just keep my head down and making sure the jokes are funny. I have great writers, clever, smart writers, and we just, we're just trying to make the best show we possibly can and entertain everybody.
Okay, well, again, that's not him being intimidated. That should be the typical viewpoint of people in late night. But late night is dying anyway, so it really does not matter. Okay, meanwhile, no late-breaking developments at this point on whether Hamas has accepted President Trump's tight deadline as far as releasing hostages at this point. Apparently, according to the New York Post, President Trump has given Hamas 3 or 4 days to accept that Gaza peace deal. Again, he presented that on Monday. It is now Wednesday. So it's not going to be long here before the green light is given and Israel basically just finishes the job. Let's be also very clear about this. If Hamas refuses, the deal that President Trump put forward is still the deal that's going to happen. It's just going to happen in the areas Israel already controls, which is nearly all of the Gaza Strip at this point. Israel, the IDF has been moving roughshod through Gaza City with minimal casualties. So the pressure is on Hamas. Here's the president saying so.
We're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
And well, that pressure, that's real. And again, President Trump has done something incredible diplomatically by getting everybody in the world, literally, to unite against Hamas, which is the thing they should have done naturally. But they decided to revert to type and engage in their typical anti-Israel behavior. And President Trump has single-handedly swiveled that entire logic, which is amazing, truly amazing. Alrighty, folks, the show continues for our members right now. We'll jump into the mailbag. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not, become a member, use code Shapiro, check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.